Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Ankita and today I'm reviewing two books. The first one is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Evans and the second one is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This review is a little different than some of my other reviews. I'm not going to spend time talking about the authors, but I'll add a link in the description down below so you can check out more about the author. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Evans. This book is set in the 1950s and the 1960s in a fishing village in Northern Carolina, where we are following the character of Kaya. She is unconventional in the sense that she goes to school only for a day. She lives in the marshes basically all by herself, and her life revolves around and in the swamps and the marshes of the land. So because she does not go to school, all of her education and life's lessons are from the land. And so in the sense, because she is illiterate, she did not go to school, she is wild, untamed, and the people in the town consider her uncivilized and they do not like mixing with her or interacting with her. So she basically lives in isolation all of her childhood, but as she's growing up, she still wants to belong, and so she starts a relationship with two guys, one of whom is really kind and helps her. The other one basically makes false promises. Right from the beginning, the story shifts from 1950s when Kaya was really young back to 1969 when a body is found in the marshes, and Kaya, being girl who lives in the marshes all by herself, is a murder suspect. So this book is a mixture of a coming of age story and also a murder mystery, although I have to say that the murder mystery is not that strong. But it does tie in very well with Kaya's story. It does point out the stereotypical attitude of the people in the fishing town, and it also touches upon female oppression, which I thought was really interesting. The theme of isolation, abandonment, and loss is very well executed in this book via Kaya's story. The prose in this book is lyrical, especially the description of the landscape and Kaya herself, because she is obviously so close and related to the marshes. Some of it I did feel was a little repetitive, and because of that it felt like the story just dragged a little bit, and it could have been a much shorter book. But then the atmosphere that the lyrical language created in this book really made me feel as if I was reading an American classic, and that is something which I really liked. There are a few things that I did find were not perfect in this book. First and foremost, the character arc of Kaya was not all that strong. I felt the dialogue was also a little weak and a little flat in some places, especially when it came to the dialogues of the sheriff. Overall, I did like this book. Like I said, I did have that classic feeling. I do like books that are written in this age and then they still feel like they are a classic, and this one definitely did. Considering that this one is set in the 1950s and 1960s, I think the author did a perfect job in creating that atmosphere and tone of the 1950s and 60s. Having said that, I will recommend this book to those of you who love lyrical language, nature prose, and also if you love reading classics, I think you will like this one. Although be prepared for a little bit of repetition when it comes to prose. And do keep going in the end, because in the end there's like a big revelation that does fit in really well with how odd and how different Kaya is. So yes, do keep reading till the end. Alright, moving on to the next one. The next one is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Where do I begin with this one? Alright, this is not a typical fiction in the sense that it does not have the direct plot, characters, dialogue, and setting, the typical things that you find in a fictional story. This one is written more in the form of a poem, in the form of prose poetry. Having said that, let's talk about what this book is all about. It is very difficult to summarize this book because as I said, it is basically a poetry. Having said that, I'll do my best to give you a gist of what this book is about. In this book, the narrator is writing a letter to his mother, who is illiterate, who cannot read, and the author is a Vietnamese immigrant to the United States. His mother works in various factories and nail salon, and he has a very difficult childhood. The narrator is basically confessing to his mother about his traumatic experiences of growing up in that household, which is very much shaped and defined by the war, and his mother has PTSD. So his mother had been abusive at times. She herself was disturbed, and she was abusive to the narrator. And the narrator talks about his experiences in the book. We also find out how the narrator and his family finds it difficult to kind of gel in the American society, and how they are not accepted and they are always treated based on the color of their skin. In this letter, we also find out that the narrator is queer. He details his first relationship with this guy, Trevor, who suffers from opioid addiction. What I really liked in this book is how the author tells the story using immense animal imagery. Be warned if you are sensitive to descriptions or details of animal brutality, which does exist in the world. Please be warned that there's a lot of it in this book. One thing that I didn't find that interesting in this book was the author's relationship with his first love, Trevor. That I personally do not enjoy a coming-of-age story, and that there are certainly such elements in this book, and there were some in the previous book as well, where the Crawdads sing. Those elements really are something that I don't find interesting. One thing that I found really odd in this book, and I couldn't place it, especially considering the format in which it is written, that is, the author is writing a letter to his mother, and there he is describing in detail his sexual encounter with his first love. I just thought it was really odd. If you were to ever write a letter to your mother, would you really tell her everything in that much detail? I don't know. Maybe she knows that the mother is never going to read the letter. Trigger warnings is, like I said, there are descriptions of animal abuse, brutality, and violence in this book. Having said that, reading this book was quite an experience. I have never ever read a book like anything like this one. And you very rarely come across prose that is written in the form of poetry. Do not think that this is poem. There are no stanzas, no verses. It is still prose. There are very few authors who can weave words into powerful sentences, and Ocean Myung is definitely one of those. The narration in this book is raw, honest, and feels brutal at times, but it does justice to the experiences that the author is talking about. Through this book, you get an insight into what it is like to be of Asian descent in America, what it is like to be an immigrant. The struggles are so real, and you also see how war affects not just the generation that sees the war, but so many generations after that as well. I believe that I can read this book a number of times, and every time that I read this, I will find a deeper meaning in this book. I recommend this book to those who love language, because language is almost like a theme in this book. I know it does not make sense, but again, this book is very different. So you have to read this book in order to understand what I'm trying to say. This book is 246 pages, and I read it in 3 days, and I still felt like I did rush through it. Maybe I should have taken more time to analyze and comprehend what the author is really talking about, because after reading a section in this book, you do have to take a little bit of time to piece together what exactly the author is trying to say. So you do require a little bit of patience. And I would also recommend this book to those of you who are looking for a reading experience that you have never had. If you made it so far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. And don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and family. And I'll see you next time.